Hello and thank you for joining me. In this session, we're going to go through a Visual Basics for Application exercise that requires us to utilize loops. As you can see in Part A, we're required to assign values to x in increments of 2 using a for next loop. Part B requires us to assign values to y in increments of 5 using a do while loop. And Part C requires us to use any kind of loop to add both x and y together to get a value for z. I'm going to go ahead and call up the code. Now, the first thing I want you to keep in mind is that the code you see here is not the only solution to this problem. There's many solutions to this problems, but this is the one we're going to go through. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and step through this, and the first thing I do is declare these variables right here. As you notice, they're all doubles. Here I have R and WS. This is actually going to be related to Excel. This is going to be my rows for R, and WS is going to stand for the worksheet, which I've named looped exercise. So let me go ahead and step through. And if you notice, the first thing I do is I assign WS a value of loop exercise. That is the worksheet I'm working on. Below that is Excel specific code, and that tells it to activate this workbook, go to the worksheet, which I've named up here, and select a certain cell, in this case A1 or row 1, column 1. Now I actually get into my loop. This is the for next loop. The first thing I do is I assign x a value of 2. And what I'm starting here with is my boundary conditions. If you notice, I'm going to run this loop for R, which stands for row, from 2 to 21. And if we look over here in our worksheet, we'll see that our value is actually going to be entered into rows 2 through 21, as shown here. And if you notice, they'll be in column 1, or column A. So here I have x equals 2. And if you notice, it's printed out the first value. And now I'm going to change the value of x by 2 by adding 2. So now I'm on my next R, which is 3, or row 3, and I go ahead and assign another x value, the one that I changed earlier, which is now 4. So I'm going to go ahead and step through this code. And if you look over here, you'll see the values filled in. Okay, so I'm at R equals 21, which is my end boundary. So now it's going to end that loop. Now what I'm doing is going into my do while loop. Since I want to use the R value again, I need to go ahead and reset it because I want to start back up here with row 2. So what I do is I go ahead and assign R the value of 2. Currently it's 22. Once I step through this and assign the value, it's now 2. Now I wanted to go through my Y values by increments of 5. So I'm going to go ahead and start off at 5. Right now it's listed at 0, but now I'm going to assign the value of 5. Here we have the do while condition. Here our loop is going to keep going until R, which is currently 2, is either less than or equal to 21. Once that's no longer the case, this loop will end. So I go here and I take my cell value, which is going to be row 2, column 2, up here, and I'm going to assign the value of y, which is currently 5. And if we notice, it prints out over here. Now what I'm going to do is increase the amount of y by an increment of 5. So it's currently 5, now it's 10, and I'm going to go to my next row. So I'm going to go ahead and step through this code. And currently my R value is 20. Still 20, it's 21. Now that it's 22, we're going to skip the loop and we'll be done with this loop. Okay, now we're on to our variable z, which requires us to add x and y together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and go through the row, each row, and I'm going to take the values that are found there and assign them to their variables. For instance, here we have x, which is part of column 1, and we have y, which is part of column 2. So it's going to step through the rows. So starting at row 2, column 1, I have a value of 2, and row 2, column 2, for y, I have a value of 5. So what we see here is that R is currently set to 22, but now that it's going here into our for next loop, it's going to go ahead and be reset to 2. And if we look over here, we'll see our values printed out. Okay, so we've gone ahead and we've made all this part of one procedure, and we've gone ahead and accomplished all the goals that were set out before us. What we want to do is we want to move on to the next exercise. Okay, in this exercise, we're asked to create a procedure to fill in the multiplication table, and we're going to do this with a nested loop. Again, we see our code, and this is not the only solution, just the one we're going to work with. So here I've gone ahead and declared my variables. So let me go ahead and step through the code. All right, again, I'm going to go ahead and assign my worksheet variable. And if you notice, this is where I start my code. And the first loop I have, the primary loop, is going to range from 1 to 10, and it's going to be our rows. The next one are our columns. And if you notice, I've gone ahead and assigned some values to these. So let's go and step through the code and see what happens. So I'm on row 1, and I'm going to go to the next column while I'm still in row 1. So here I have r equals 1, column equals 3. And if you notice, it's filling in left to right. I'm going to go ahead and speed this up a little bit. Now what's happening is that all of the columns are filled in for every row increment. So we select a row, fill in all the columns for that row, then move on to the next row. And that's how a nested loop works. Okay, so what we've done so far is we've filled in each row column by column. Now what I'm going to do is we're going to fill in each column row by row. And the way I'm going to do that is, since our multiplication table here is 10 by 10, I can go ahead and just swap these around. I'm going to change our R value to C, and I'm going to change our C value to R. And I'm going to go ahead and clear the worksheet, bring my code back, and we're going to run this through real quick. And now you can see it's filling in row by row before it moves on to the next column. Okay, so hopefully those exercises give you some practical experience and understanding on how loops work, how to work with conditional statements in loops, and how to work with nested loops. So if you found this video useful, please click like and share with others. Thank you.